this is Bill Gladwell, and welcome to episode number 3 of the Hey Look at Me podcast. In this episode, I sit down with comedian Louis Ramey. Louis has 3 Comedy Central specials and appearances on The Tonight Show, The View, VH1, MTV, and he was a finalist on Last Comic Standing. Louis has now set his sights on the globe, and we talk about his 40-country tour he recently returned from. His stand-up was in over 170 theaters across the United Kingdom in a movie called The Comedy Store, Raw and Uncut. Louis is a favorite at comedy festivals worldwide, and he recently won the 2014 Gilda's LaughFest Audience Favorite Clean Comedy Award. Louis and I talk about Tom Arnold, turning anywhere with a microphone into an open mic night, and the importance of knowing how to handle different types of audiences. If you haven't already subscribed to the podcast, you can subscribe on iTunes and Stitcher, and when you do, leave a 5-star review. I would really appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter, at Bill Gladwell, and you can jump on my website with any questions or comments at BillGladwellLive.com. So, enjoy episode number 3 of the Hey Look at Me podcast. Yeah.
Mayo.
Is it Mayo or Mio?
I have no idea. I say Mayo because of bio.
Oh, maybe it is Mayo. Is it Mayo or Mio? What would Mio mean? He said he thought it was Mayo because of bio. Are you not listening anymore? Oh, yeah. All right. Excuse me. Whoa. What do you got? What flavor?
I like the peach tea.
I get the berries.
I was into those, but the peach tea was the first one I started. It's always the one you start with.
But I got the vanilla Coke here, which is probably not good for me. We were on the beach all day today. Oh, I forgot to introduce, the last time I did a podcast last week, I forgot to introduce until about a quarter of the way into it. And so we don't have a name for the podcast yet, and we're 3 episodes in.
The no-name
Yeah,
podcast.
but we haven't, that's what everybody says, but we haven't released any of the podcast yet because we're getting a few in the bank. So after today's and one more, then I'm going to start releasing them, and it'll be on a weekly thing, just in case we miss a week or something like that. Here's what we came up with, and I looked, and nobody has it, so I think this is going to be the name. I think it's going to be, Hey, Look at Me.
Look at me.
Yeah. So we should tell who you are, Louis Ramey.
Louis Ramey.
If the guest from last night, she was coming to see Louis Ramsey.
Yes.
And
left seeing the best entertainer she's ever seen in her entire life.
Yes,
Apparently.
she did. So I introduced you for the past 3 nights and one more time tonight, and so I know we got Comedy Central, we got the Tonight Show.
Yes.
We have finalists on Last Comic Standing.
Yes.
And anything else that any of the listeners need to know?
Just finished a tour of 40 countries.
Was that a military tour, or was it
No.
Really?
All on my own. And also I did a movie in the UK, a stand-up movie in the UK last year.
And about stand-ups?
No, it was, they pretty much, their idea was to film an actual show at the Comedy Store in London and then play it in all these posh theaters around the UK, like 171 theaters.
Oh, so it's just stand-up?
Yeah.
Oh, I got it. And when's that supposed to be out?
Oh, it's out now.
Is it?
Still playing in theaters there.
And going well?
Yeah.
And you and just you, or how many?
It's me and 4 other comics.
Really?
But it's a series. So there's actually 3 shows that they've actually taped and aired in theaters.
Nice.
Yeah.
And it's a full length, like
Yeah, full length show.
not just the previews or anything like that.
No.
Before the movie starts.
And see what they do in England is after each comic, a comic comes up, thanks everyone, and says, "All right, we're going to take an interval," and then everyone goes and gets a drink. There are no waitresses at comedy shows in the UK.
Really?
So everyone gets up, goes outside for a smoke, goes get a drink, comes back, sits down, and the MC comes back up again and brings up another comic. So that adds 15 minutes. Those intervals are 15 minutes. So there's no such thing. It's very hard to do 2 shows on a Friday night or Saturday night in the UK because each show is like 2 hours.
It's like Hilton Head.
Yeah.
That's just because everybody goes to bed about 9 o'clock. But yeah,
that's the thing about Hilton Head. I've heard that if you're 75 and can see and drive at night, you are the hottest available dude on the island. He can leave at night. He can take us dancing. Yeah.
Wait, we have a restaurant downstairs from the comedy club here, and I was down there just before you got here, and I was talking to it was a table of 4, and 2 of them were getting married, but they were on their honeymoon, but they didn't have time to take a honeymoon after their wedding, which is June 6th, so they were doing their honeymoon now and then getting married on June 6th. But they were probably in mid-50s, late 50s. And so I said, hey, we got a comedy club upstairs. You should come up afterwards. And they said, what time is it? I said, 8 o'clock. They said, we have white hair. We go to bed at 8 o'clock is what they said. And that's what it is around here a lot.
Right.
So,
and that's your local news. Click. Where's the remote? Where's the remote?
So, I asked you to do the podcast.
Yes.
And but I don't know if I told you a whole lot about it. But it's more just about, if anybody is listening to the podcast is either, number one, interested in not only just what you do, comics, but what just general entertainment, because I do the Mentalism show. Mm-hmm. So anybody that is basically a one-man show that stands up and says, hey, look at me, right? And but how to get started and what kind of things that you think contribute to being successful and things like that. So, and you don't have to give any secrets away. But just whatever we want to talk about is what we do.
It's amazing to me, at least, that when I started, I look back on what I did at the very beginning of my career, and no one does that anymore. And it's almost thought of as the wrong route to take. And that's,
what do you mean? What do you mean by that? I know it's wrong route, but looking back on it, what did you do before, and then?
Well, I decided that I would go anywhere that had a stage that would allow me to perform.
Oh, well, that makes sense, right?
Yeah, it makes sense now, but because it worked. But no young comics are doing that. No young comics are walking into a jazz club and saying, when the band ggets off and there's a break, can I go up and tell some jokes?
What are they doing now?
They all go to open mics with other comics that don't know. So they're surrounded by, and they're all asking the same questions and no one has the answers.
Well, let's put this in perspective then. I started in 89,
right.
And so it was different then for me for what I do. Right. So when did you start?
I started in 86.
About the same time?
Around the same time, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so
And I started in Atlanta, and there were only 2 comedy clubs, and I wanted stage time. And when I went to the Punchline there in Atlanta, they told me, well, fill out this, put your name on the list along with everyone else. And I put my name, and there were 20 names on the list. And they didn't pick me. And the next week they didn't pick me. And the next week they didn't pick me. So at that point, I was going to jazz clubs, rock and roll clubs, bars that had before karaoke.
Yeah.
The band's not here. The band's only here on Wednesday. Well, can you turn the mic on and let me entertain the audience? And, I had about 15 places that I would go to that would allow me to get on stage. So it taught you how to deal with every type
and this
of
is all for free.
Yeah.
And these are places, a lot of these are places that they didn't come to see comedy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it makes you a stronger comic.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to get the audience right away, convince them, hey, this is what you want to see, and then start.
And so you think it's easier now?
I think it's so much easier now. It's so much easier to be fair comic and make a living.
Well, that is true.
It used to be, survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
If you weren't good enough to work, then there wasn't any motivation for you to go on the road. You couldn't make a living on the road because you weren't good enough to be on the road. It gets to the point now where, instead of saying how funny you are, a lot of comics are going, hey, I've got 5,000 friends on Twitter. And you're like, well, that doesn't mean anything. But to me, it doesn't mean anything. But to club owners, they think, well, he's got 5,000 friends on Twitter. If I book him, a lot of those people are going to pay to come into my show.
Well, yeah, because I have a little over 25,000 friends on Twitter myself.
I know.
And we had, in the teens last night,
Yeah.
almost 20 people because it's Hilton Head. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not that Hilton Head is bad. It's that the tourist season hasn't started. So
well, and also I'd have to say Hilton Head is it's a different beast because
it is.
It doesn't matter how great the show is or how you try to advertise it. Number one problem is finding it.
Yes,
there are no billboards here. There's
not just the comedy club, but everywhere.
Everywhere. Yeah. People are running out of gas. They can't find a gas station. There are no signs. There's no neon signs. There's no billboards. There's no. So I have driven by a Subway 5 times before I realized, oh my God, there's a Subway in there.
No.
I thought that was a house. So, it's hard to advertise here. And there's everybody selling those little local pamphlets and advertising space on the local pamphlets. So you pick them up, and it's everything you could imagine to do. And you're like, Are you going to really spend $5,000 on a space, on a little tiny leaflet that's handed out? Yeah. This is a different beast. It's not like Vegas. Vegas, if you got the money, build the billboard, set off some fireworks, everybody knows who you are.
That's right. It's a different beast. You got it right. So, did you always want to be a comedian? My nephew, at one point, he's only 7 or 8 now, but he wanted to be a comedian, and now he wants to be a strip club owner. But, yeah. So he's I don't know if he's moving up or moving down, but
financially he's moving up. Financial stability, he's moving up. That's recession proof. I don't know if you're aware of that. But even in a depression, people are like, I got to go see some women. Yeah. So, did you always want to be one, or what happened? I mean, when did that thought start to take place? I remember watching I don't know if I was listening to a Richard Pryor album or no. Actually, I saw a Richard Pryor special, and I remember thinking to myself, wow, wouldn't it be great to have that job, to have the freedom of just saying whatever is on your mind and to entertain thousands of people? I thought that would be a great job, although I know I could never do it. But I would like to do it once in my life. And I tried it in college, and the moment I stepped on stage, and I'm talking like 30 seconds into being on stage, I was like, I have to do this again. And once I got off stage, I was like, I have to do this again. And I couldn't think of anything else to do. I was in college. I couldn't even think about studying. I would be reading a report, and all of a sudden I go, that would be a great bit. And start writing a bit about it. So I couldn't think of anything else. But as a kid, I just wanted to be, I thought I was funny. I was a funny kid. And I had no outlet for it. When you're a funny, if you're a musical kid, there are tons of people throwing things at you.
Oh, yeah.
Opportunities. If you're an athletic kid, people drop everything. You're going to be the next, blah, blah. But if you're a funny kid, even if you're the cleverest kid in the world, people think of that as a negative. Like, laughing's not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah.
Telling jokes is not
right.
gonna, So for me, I thought, well, let me take acting. I took a few acting courses, and I wanted to be on stage. And then I did stand up, and then I knew that's what I wanted to do. And after that, that's all I could think of.
Now, you got your brothers and sisters?
Yes, I have a brother and a sister, both adopted.
I
have a brother and 2 sisters. Sorry.
Oh, where do you fall in line with that?
I am the oldest,
Really?
Yeah.
So am I, and it goes against what we do.
Yes.
For firstborns.
Yes.
It really does.
Yes.
It'd be the lastborn trying to get attention from the rest of us. But
it worked the opposite, because I was the only child for a very long time, and my sister Regina was adopted, and I remember it to this day, Christmas morning, waking up and realizing that everything under the tree was not mine.
Yeah.
That was a very...
Wow.
I remember just going, wait, what do you mean the bike's not mine? Why does it have Regina's name on it? Oh, no, you're not telling me half the stuff is hers. She just got here.
You're older. More than half the stuff is
right,
hers.
right. Right. I want the dollhouse. I want it all. It's all mine. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
So
hard.
college then, 1920, that's when you really said this is what I want to do.
Yeah, it's weird because I think when I started, I was 19, and I remember going to the Punchline, and all the other comics were pretty much in their mid-30s. And no one really thought people just go, oh, that's just Louis. That's goofy Louis.
Is there anybody, Punchline, where's that at again?
In Atlanta.
In Atlanta, that's right. Was there anybody there that people would recognize?
Jeff Foxworthy.
Oh,
got to
okay,
start there.
Yep.
Gardell, who's on Mike and Molly.
Yeah, right.
He got it.
While you were doing the open mics.
Yeah. Oh, I remember Carrot Top.
Or you weren't even doing open mics.
Right.
You were just waiting in line.
Yeah.
Now, what was their criteria to get on stage? Or was it a random thing, or how did they choose?
It was partially random, but the way they thought, the furthest you traveled, the better the chance you'd get on stage. So if you were a comic from San Francisco who were just driving by, chances are you got on stage. Chicago, you got on stage. I was from Fulton County. I was just 2 miles down the road. So they just went, well, he'll be back. We don't have to put him on now. And so after a week, after about 6 weeks of constantly putting my name on, they finally put me on and thought, wow, that guy's funny. And so I went the next week and they put me on again. And I guess I didn't realize that those 15 jokes that I wrote for the first show, I thought, hey, I'll just keep doing the same 15 jokes. And they were like, no, we want to see something else. And so I started writing jokes and I was obsessed with it. Like, I think that as a kid, or just when you find what you should be doing the rest of your life, when you choose your path or find out your path, it makes life so much simpler. You could just focus on that.
Yeah, that's right.
There's so many. I do colleges now, and I do shows. And you ask kids like, "Hey, so what are you doing here?" "Oh, we're getting a degree in forestry." And I go, "Oh, you must really love being." And I go, "No, not so much. That's what the jobs are around here." And then you go, "So you're not planning on leaving?"
No, they just stay there. They
stay there.
Yeah.
And some people, I know kids that are 18 and they always dreamed of being being a police officer or being a lawyer or being a doctor. They've dreamed of it their entire lives, and I commend them. But 98% of them are just walking around campus just going, well, where can I make some money?
Yeah, I agree with that.
And,
that's what they're doing. I got a son in college now. He's almost 20, and that's what they do.
Yeah. It's not their passion. It's just like, my passion is money.
They think that's what they're supposed to do.
Right.
And now, I mean, back then, though, you were, 87, 88 in college?
Yeah.
Or something, and 89 was mine. And back then, that may have been what you were supposed to do. It helped back then. Now, not so much.
Well, here's a strange statistic. If you were to kill every lawyer in the United States, their jobs could be replaced. Every job could be replaced by this year's graduating class. There is no shortage of lawyers.
No.
And so when you go into high school and you go, I want to be a lawyer, you just go, well, you can go to school for it. But if you graduate at the top of your class, let's say you graduate in the top 10% of your class, it used to be in the 70s, you got a job upon graduation.
Yeah, right.
In the 80s, if you graduated at top 3, you still had to wait a month or a year. Now, you could be valedictorian and wait 5 years to find a perfect job at a law firm that will accept you. Unless you're in an Ivy League.
Yeah, I mean, I told my son, I said, I'm okay with you going to college, but if you're going to college for something technical, you need law or teacher, something like that, doctor, engineer.
Yeah.
Yes. But if you want to own a business, if you want to do other stuff, you need to learn how to do this stuff, but you don't have to go to college for that anymore.
I always tell them, master electrician.
Yeah.
If you knew how much a master electrician makes, I can say, go now. Be a plumber, whatever it is, but every building in the world has a toilet. Every one of them needs to be, has electricity. They all have to have everything checked out by a master electrician.
Yeah.
And there's like $500 an hour. They get charged.
Yeah. I run into bartenders all the time, and they have law degrees or medical degrees.
Yeah. But
they're making more bartending.
So find out what your passion is.
Yeah.
I always say, what would you do for free? And comedy was that thing.
How was that? Because I know how it was with me, and I bet it's just similar to what you went through. It was your passion, but how was everybody else around you about that idea?
I told my mom I wanted to do stand-up, and she tells me to this day that all she heard was, I want to be homeless.
Yeah. I
told my dad I wanted to be a comic. He said, well, I don't want to hear any more of that nonsense. Come back to me when you've decided to settle down and do something serious. I told all my friends, and they said, well, you're not Eddie Murphy. And you don't know anybody in the business, and it's who you know. It's not what you do, it's who you know. And no one really supported me. And so that's one of those things where I always say, you know what? I'm doing the right thing. I'm doing the right thing, because it doesn't matter what other people think. There's an audience in front of me laughing.
Yeah, it's and I'm sure you had those times because you had people against you.
Yes.
Maybe not against you, but people that didn't believe, they weren't on the same wavelength as you were, and I had the same thing. But then there's times that for me, and I want to find out if it happened for you too. But there were times that you thought maybe they're right.
Yeah. There were times where I just thought, I'm having a great time doing what I love. And I may not be the funniest, and I may not make $1 million, and I may not be a success at this. But for right now, I'm having a great time. And
Okay.
I did resorts down in the Cayman Islands and St. Thomas and St. Croix, and I think they were paying me $300 a week, but they gave me a hotel room.
Yeah, you got to stay, right?
And I got to stay. So I thought that was heaven. And I did that for 3 or 4 years.
And how old were you when you did that?
I think I started when I was 24.
Well, that's nice when you're 24.
Yeah. And all I kept thinking was, well, I don't want to be here when I'm 30. But right now, this is fantastic. And for me at least, there was one moment I remember I was working on cruise ships at this point, and I realized, I haven't been on land in about 5 years, performing on land. And all my contacts have dried up. I don't think they even know I'm still alive. And if I really want to find out how good I am as a comic and test myself, I should move to New York. And for me, that was the smartest move I ever made, because the day I moved to New York, I remember I had a list of things I wanted, and I accomplished everything on that list almost within 9 months after moving to New York, and stuff that I didn't even think was possible. I thought, I want a Comedy Central special. I want to be on The Tonight Show. I want an apartment in New York that's comfortable. I don't want to be in some rat-infested place. And I just wrote everything down and went to New York. And like 9 months after I got there, I won an award in Aspen, got a Comedy Central special, got a development deal from ABC, was on The View, was on, got asked to be on The Tonight Show, all within boom, 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 all happening at once.
How long ago was that?
That was 2000. Oh, it was 1999. I won Aspen in 99. I did my Comedy Central half hour in 2001. I had done The View and Carson Daly and a couple of other little other shows in between then. So it was perfect. It was perfect for me. It validated everything I thought. As a comic, you never know how good you are. People clap and go, "Hey, you were fantastic." And then the next day you see some guy go up and make fart noises, and he gets off stage and people go, "Hey, you were great. You're the funniest comic I've ever seen." And you go, "Wow, they say the same thing to me. Why? How can I tell if I'm good?" So you just, keep writing and keep performing and thinking, that you're on the right path. But it wasn't until Aspen that I saw other people who were knowledgeable and knew comedy and had seen hundreds of comics come up and shake my hand and say, "Oh, that was brilliant, that bit you did." And I go, "That's what I thought." Yeah. So that was a changing point for me. New York really, I don't think I'd still be doing comedy if it wasn't for New York. Yeah, I needed something to show that I could possibly not only make a living at this, but raise a family. That I wasn't like every other comic. People don't realize there are thousands of people trying to do comedy. And out of those thousands, there are very few of them doing it for a living. And out of those few people, there are thousands of people trying to take your job every day and move you off the list. Yeah. So it's a difficult job. So when you start to realize, oh, I can make a living at this and I can excel at this, that really takes the weight off your shoulders and lets you, experiment more and want to do more.
I was listening to another podcast, actually, Penn Jillette from Penn & Teller, and he had Bobby Slayton on his. Yes. And Penn was talking about Hypnotist, which is what I did for years. I did it for the corporate market, and he didn't believe in it. And they did a bullshit show on Showtime, about Hypnotist. And he said he's rethought some of the stuff. Maybe some of it's legit, but still the entertainment is just it's all peer pressure and stuff up on stage. And he goes, I just don't like Hypnotist. And then Bobby Slayton goes, "That's all right." He goes, "Comics don't like magicians," is what he said.
So true. So true.
And so it was a little Odd for me, my whole career move, because I did the hypnosis for a long time and corporate market, and then I moved to Gatlinburg. I told you that, and did my mentalism show, which was completely different. Lied my way into that position because I said that's what I wanted to do, and I told him I could do that, and I had to put a show together really quick. Right. And then brought it down to Hilton Head about 2 months ago. And the opening, my role models or my inspirations have been from stand-up. Because if I'm anywhere in any city when I'm traveling, it's usually a night at a club someplace watching. Right. And so I love stand-up. And so I wanted to work that into my show. But I found out the more that I was around comics, it's a parallel career. The career progression is parallel between the two. Yeah. Because it's just, I do stand-up, I just don't do comedy. Right. I do the mentalism. And so... Did you have a plan B?
I think no. First of all, simple answer.
Neither did I.
No.
That's why I was asking. Yeah.
No plan B. And I think that when you're doing stand-up or any sort of performing, I think when you have your day job, the moment you get rid of your day job and all your priorities you go, well, I've been doing this as a hobby. I've been doing it on the side, but now I have to make a living at it. Mm-hmm. Your act gets 10 times better almost immediately because that's all you think about. And you try to, now you're taking 100% of all your efforts to just cut the fat and make this joke better and make this joke better and work on this timing and this and that. So when I left Atlanta, when I started doing stand, I told my parents, I said, I'm quitting school. I'm going to do stand-up. And my dad said, all right, do it for a year. And I did it for a year. I knew I was getting closer to the year, and I kept saying to myself, what would prevent my father from saying, all right, quit, go back to school? I went television. So I pursued television, and within that year, I got Showtime at the Apollo. And I remember going home, sitting in the living room. I've told my dad I was going to be on television, and we click on the TV show. And at the beginning, they go, hey, Showtime at the Apollo, starring Louis Ramey. And my dad looks at me and goes, they don't usually say the amateur's name at the beginning of the show. And I go, I'm not going on the amateur. You're not on the amateur portion of this? I go, no, I'm not. So the show goes on, and then they go, hey, please welcome Louis Ramey. And I walk on stage. 2 minutes after I've gotten on stage, my dad looks at me and goes, you're still talking. I go, yeah, I'm one of the acts. Another minute goes by. He goes, they're going to let you keep going? So you're one of the acts. You're on the show. I go, yes, I'm on the show. And that was the moment I went from my dad answering people when they said, where's your son? From saying, oh, he's out finding himself, to my son's a professional comedian. Come watch this tape I have. And that VHS just wore down to nothing. He played it for everyone that walked in the house, and it changed his attitude immediately. Because in his mind, he thought, if you can go to New York and get on television 3 years after starting, walking on stage the first time, then there must be something there. Yeah,
it's, the new comics that are, for my profession, you guys in your profession, you have the open mics now. Yeah. Which you didn't have before. No. But now they have them, and I've been to them.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember in Columbus, Ohio at the Funny Bone, I was after a open mic. I was at the bar. You've been there, right?
Yes.
And it's in a nice mall over there, and I was standing at the bar, and this girl was on stage. She must have been about 24, 25, and she was one of the open micers. And she goes, what'd you think? So I didn't like it at all. I said, the way you look, because she was cute, I said, the way you look, it doesn't correspond to what's coming out of your mouth.
Right.
And she got mad. And then I went back the next week, and she was there again, same act, and she wasn't getting a response. She asked me again. She goes, was that any better? I said, you did the same thing, is what I said. Yes. I don't even know what happened to her. I haven't seen her in Comedy Central, and this has been years ago.
Her name was Sarah Silverman. And now No. I think that, that's one of the things that stops most comics from succeeding in this business, is that you can't look at Dice Clay and say, I want to be that type of comedian. you have to just don't work on, because if you spend your efforts trying to be Dice Clay, hey, we already got a Dice Clay. We don't need you. You need to spend most of the first 3 years of the business just trying to be funny. And the things that you find funny will create a character on stage, an exaggerated version of yourself, and that's the character that you'll be. You don't start comedy and say, I'm going to be a brilliant, dry, witty comic. I'm going to be a wacky, zany comic. Just worry about funny, and then everything else will just follow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll ask you first. What do you think the most important ingredient is if someone decides they want to be a stand-up? What is the most important ingredient that would help them? It has the most bang for the buck of getting them to where they want to be.
I would say blinders. Don't look at other comics, other open micers. Don't look at people on your same level. If you want to be a professional comic, then study professional comics. Look at as much stand-up as you can, and start to notice what timing does to a joke, and how you can use the volume of your voice or facial expressions or making sounds to make a joke funnier. Look at what professional comics do to make a living doing this. Because what happens is a lot of comics, they know that, hey, if I do something edgy, I'll make the other comics laugh, and they end up performing for the other comics. Or some comic will walk over, some open micer who has never made a living at this at all will walk over and go, I don't like that joke that you do with the thing. Don't take advice from that idiot. Put on blinders. It should be going on stage, filming yourself, coming home, looking at it and seeing what you did wrong, changing it and getting better, and working at it, looking at what you've done, figure out what gets a laugh, going back and think of it as, I am trying to make this better. I am trying to get funnier. And for every comic, I always say, if you are complaining about the business and you're saying, well, I'm not getting ahead and I'm not getting this and I'm funnier than that guy and I'm funnier than that guy and I'm not living in LA or I'm not living in New York, I always say, look, if you're getting a standing ovation every night, everybody in LA already knows who you are, and everybody in New York already knows who you are. They will find you if you can get a standing ovation every night. So that should be your goal. Your goal should be walking off the stage with everyone jumping to their feet and screaming, "You are amazing!" like
last night.
Like last night, yes. Like what happened last night, yes.
She was special.
Yes, she was.
Yeah, she was. Well, what's the mixture? What's the ingredients in that? And what I mean by that is, because you said, rework your stuff. Mm-hmm. You watch it, record it, or listen to it. Yeah. And what is the mixture? How much of that is what you want to do, and how much is it the response that you're getting from the audience? Because I see comics that they have their vision of what they want to be,
right?
But nobody's laughing.
Right.
So what's that balance there?
Well, you can be yourself and you can have all the freedom in the world, but at the end of the day, there are a lot of comics that have a message in their act or a viewpoint. That's all secondary. No one gives a crap about your viewpoint. No one cares about the message you want to give. Everyone wants to enjoy themselves. So at the end of the day, you record yourself and you listen at the jokes that you think are funny that aren't getting any response whatsoever. That needs some work. That joke needs some work. It needs something. It's just not clicking the way it should, and it needs some work. The moment you do a joke, it doesn't get a laugh, and you blame the crowd, you have become a lesser comic.
I hear, those radio show, Bob and Tom, for example. You've been on Bob and Tom.
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
And but I hear comics, and they have different views on that. Yeah. And there's the view that is what you said. Listen, if it's a bad night, take the blame for it and change it up the next night.
Right.
And other comics go, it was a bad crowd. It was just a horrible crowd that night. But after doing shows over and over again myself, you do get different crowds. Mm-hmm. But you need to know how to handle each different crowd.
Right.
And some people just don't understand that.
You have to think of, I always think of it as a boxing when I'm dealing with a new audience, you watch any boxing match, the first couple of minutes of a boxing match, you got to find out exactly how far of a reach this guy has.
Yeah.
How strong of a puncher he is, how fast he is. You have to figure out all these things immediately. And then you can make a plan and go, all right, now I have a plan to knock this guy out. With an audience, it's the same thing. First 3 jokes, I know immediately. There's an old guy in the back with his wife. He's never going to laugh. There are some 3 guys over here on the left. They're going to heckle. I can tell. That bachelorette party, too drunk. They're talking to themselves. If I can make them the center of attention for just a second, they'll shut up. Then you figure that out. You do your plan. You get it done. But I have seen nights when I was starting out. I saw nights where everybody bombed. Everybody bombed. The crowd was horrendous. And a professional comic who'd been doing it 15 years walks in the room and says, yeah, I'm working on a new bit. Can I go on? And immediately the entire crowd, it's like they're the best crowd in the world. Immediately. I don't know if it's the confidence of him walking on stage or how he says the thing, or maybe he's so relaxed on stage. But boom, he's done it before. He knows how this works. He sees the crowd. He does the assessment. Boom. And when I saw that the first couple of times, I realized, yeah, I got to change it up. I do knock-knock jokes. If knock-knock jokes work, that's what'll work. Talking to the audience, if that helps, do that. Picking on one person might help. Picking on the crowd might help. Or just being self-deprecating. This, you guys are really humbling. I thought, I really am thinking about going back to college. You say that a couple times and that just relaxes people. Keep going. It's never the crowd. It's never the crowd. I mean, it's your job. That's like saying I lost the race because the concrete was too sticky or the tires were too.
Yes.
No,
yeah.
Oh, he had a faster car. Period.
Yeah.
Period. That's what happened.
And it's hard for new comics or new entertainers in general to figure that out, and some of them never do.
No.
And I see veteran. We saw. When I say we, my wife and I, we saw one that you would know in Knoxville, and it was his feature act was 100% better than he was.
Yeah.
Can we say who it was?
Yeah.
Can't say who it was?
Sure we can. It's America.
Tom Arnold.
Yes! Yes! Well, that makes sense. Yeah. Well, here's one of the basic things that I think every comic knows deep down inside. It's a hard job. And you got to stay on your toes, and you got to keep doing it. You can't take 5 years off, do a television series, and then think you're going to walk onto a stage in Vegas and entertain people for an hour. It doesn't work that way. It's not like jumping back on a bike.
Yeah, right.
It's like boxing every day. And if you just say, you know what, I took 10 years off of boxing, and now I'm going to step in the ring with Pacquiao, you're going to die.
Yeah.
You can't let those muscles go. You can't let the timing get slipped. You have to work at it constantly.
And I always go in with high hopes. And I know people would do that on my show too. They come in because they want to have a good time. They want the show to succeed.
Yes.
No, but I don't think anybody sits in the chair. Maybe somebody, but nobody sits in the chairs out here and says, "Listen, I hope he just fails on stage." But I go and I sit there and it's hard for me to sit through the show because I feel so bad for the person that's on stage sometimes.
Yes. And I've seen big name acts just bomb horrifically, and at the end of the show, there's still a line of people want his autograph.
Yeah.
But it's not because they want it. The show was horrible. But I get to tell all my friends when I get home that I met. Yeah.
And we can't. You and I can't do that. I mean, you more than me. But because people here, like these 4 days here,
right?
You're just like everybody else,
right?
And she was hoping to see Louis Ramey
last
night, but
Ramsey Lewis. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah. So they want to be entertained, and if you're like everybody else, you better be able to handle the crowd and do a good job.
Well, I think they want to be entertained, but there is especially among men, this sort of, let's see what he's gonna do. Let's see what he's got. Let's see this funny man. Let's see what he's gonna. And then those are the guys that really laugh the loudest because they're trying to hold it back. You hit them with something they didn't expect. That's the guy that spits his drink across the room.
Yep.
But I would say the hardest thing in comedy is like hecklers. When it comes to hecklers, it's those people that feel like, for me at least, it's people that want to be the center of attention, who find it troubling that you are the center of attention. Especially when it comes to guys. Guys in a corporate sense, they're going out for a drink to a comedy club and you got 8 guys in suits. One of those guys is the runt of the litter who is going to stand up and say something and get a laugh and get the high five from his buddies. Yeah, see what I just did? I outdid the comedian. Well, I find that most comics, if you have been coasting on your career doing television, you don't know how to deal with that. I know famous comics who are very good, but one guy in the audience going, I don't like your shoes, just sends them into a tirade. Like, I am doing a professional show. I am an artist. You're like, no, you got it. You got to be prepared for everything.
And those are like the lady last night.
Yes.
I mean, those are some of the best times to watch the person on stage handle that situation for the rest of the crowd. Yeah. And you have to know how to do it.
Because I've like in London, I lived in London for 2 years, and in London they deal with hecklers differently. They talk to them. So if someone says, "I don't find you funny," in the middle of someone's show, he goes, "You don't? Oh, well, I have more material. What kind of things would you like? Something a little more, racy? Would you like something a little more racy, or maybe something a little goofy?" Political. You like political humor? Because I have some political things. He's like, political. All right, I'll do some political. See where you like that? And you see that as an American comic, and you're like, you're supposed to jump off the stage and put your boot print in his neck and tell him to shut up, because I'm going to tell you. But you watch them do it, and you go, oh, all right, well, it works. I don't know how it works, but it works.
Yeah, but when you were over there, how did you handle it?
I handled it my way.
And how did that play?
That's when I realized that, there's many ways to pluck a chicken. And I realized I was getting stuck in my old ways. And that's what happens to veterans who've been doing it forever. If you start doing cruise ships and you know that there's going to be a mother, a daughter, and a family, and you do a little improv, and all of a sudden you have this bit where you're calling them the Brady Bunch, it's easy to just do it every week. Because there's always going to be a family, and I'll always do the Brady Bunch. And you're just going, hey, we all went to Cozumel. I'll write some jokes about Cozumel. And before you know it, you got a whole act that works perfect on a cruise ship. And you get off, and you're playing Charlotte. And as soon as you walk out, you go, so, any of you been on a cruise? Because I got some great jokes about Cozumel, which won't make any sense because you're all here. Yeah, that's what happens to veterans. Like, you get caught into your own little bubble of playing the same people in the same places, and then they put you in a different situation, and it gets ugly.
Now, on the business side of things, and we'll wrap this up here, because we got to start the show in a little bit.
Yes,
here,
yes, we do.
On the business side of things, and I've had other comics do this, and when I say you, I'm talking about managing the club here and bringing you guys in. You've come up after every show and said, hey, was that too close to the line? Was that over the line? How did I do? And you cared about how I felt.
Right.
Not everybody does that, though. Yeah. So when it comes to somebody that's in the business that is just going out and doing open mics and starting to get into the business, what do you recommend to that? I mean, because that's good customer service on your part.
Yes, yes.
And like I said, no, everything was fine. I tell you that every night. But it's, everything was good.
I think that, some of the basics for every business are the same. I see so many comics that just show up late, and you go, this is any job. You wouldn't show at a corporate job or even work at fast food. You show up 2 hours late for fast food, they fire you. The basic things, showing up on time, you're there to make people laugh, do the joke. Stop being so relaxed on stage. Get to the joke. There's so many comics out there that just don't empathize with the club owner and the audience. When you say something, like I've seen people on stage, like you probably had comics here who've done it, who said, there's a lot of old people here in Hilton Head.
Yes.
And you want to yell at them and go, who do you think's in your audience? You just insulted half the people. Look at all these old women in here. You want them to laugh at you now. You've already alienated all of them. So you have to think of your act from everyone's perspective. And you have to think of yourself from it. You have to think, I wonder if the club owner, what does he want from me? What does the club owner want from me? What does the manager want from me? What do the waitresses want from me? The waitresses want me to mention that they're working hard and you should tip them. The club owner wants you to mention hey, this is a great club. It's a beautiful venue. Thank you for supporting live comedy. I say that at the end of every show.
Yeah.
It's a business. It's something you want to do the rest of your life. So make it easier for you to come back to a club. Be professional. Do the job. Some comics think it's cool to piss somebody off. I pissed that guy off in the butt. That's not cool. And no. It doesn't get you back to a comedy club.
It's not. I just heard, I was with Bob and Tom this week. I was listening, and Tom was saying, and I don't know who it was. He said they had a comic in as a guest, and he was doing the pre-interview with him. And he said, is there anything that you want me to bring up? He said, yeah, ask me about meeting the Queen. And so at some point they did. Tom goes, I heard you met the Queen. He goes, yep. And that was it. That's all he said. And he said he never came back.
Right.
And it's the same thing with the club or any corporate gig with a ship, anything. Yeah. If you're not pleasing the people that are hiring you, you're not coming back.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's really, they want you to do a job. And you have to look at it and go, that's the job they want me to do. So if they say, by the way, we want you to be squeaky clean, there are families on the front row. There's no leeway with that.
No.
You can't play with that. You have to do it along the lines in which they've just drawn in the sand. Boom. Okay, I'll have to be clean. There are kids there. Because you saying some off-color joke to a 4-year-old kid might be funny to you, but it is offensive to 300 people in the room. Mm-hmm. And the manager and the booker. And this is a very small village.
Yeah.
That gets around.
Yep.
And before you know it, you can't get work because people go, remember when you were in Knoxville? You go, you know about that? Everybody knows about that. When you dropped your pants, I was drunk. Yeah. Well, that's all I needed. It's a cool story to tell your friends back home at the open mic club, but unless you're going to stay doing open mic in the Chuckle Factory in Milwaukee, I suggest you change your ways. Yeah.
Well, it's been a good run so far this week. Tonight we ended up, and and, we'll have you back whenever you want to come back. But
just as long as that woman's
she's going to see you in Chicago. She said, and but I appreciate you doing the podcast.
Absolutely.
And, if there's a let's finish it up with this. How can people get a hold of you if they want to either book you or come and see you?
Oh, well, that's easy. I would say go to my Facebook site. You just go to Facebook and put in Louis Ramey, or you can Google Louis Ramey. That will probably take you to the site, and that's Louis, Louis Ramey.
Sounds good.
Best way to remember that is Do Re Mi.
That's really good.
Louis Ramey.
That's unique. Yeah, that's creative. All right, well, thanks, Louis. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, that was good.